the entertainment highlight of the week.
Red Ray Gun Limited presents
The Benji and Nick Show. Hello.
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 Hello from north of the border. Hello, and that insult to all Scottish people. Sorry. Good day.
Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Good evening.
Goodness.
Loch Ness.
Hello, and welcome to the Benji and Nick Show. I'm not Benji.
And I'm not Nick, but one thing we do is we talk cult television, TV from the past, TV not from the future, just from the past.
Things you might have in the future.
Yeah, that's a good one, isn't it? Yeah. Things that you might have forgotten about, things that you remember, and things you'd rather forget. That's what we do,
the
don't
Loch Ness game, but that is what we do. Yes, the Loch Ness game, which you heard earlier on, is not really a game, and it's not really about Loch Ness, and it is entirely pointless. But it's just one of those sort of habits we've developed, and so
it's tradition.
It's tradition, and if you've never heard it before, sorry, it must be annoying. If you have heard it before, sorry, it must be annoying.
Well, I suppose it's like Christmas crackers, isn't it? I mean,
yes.
When was the last time you thought, the lovely meaning behind having a Christmas cracker?
Never. I tell you, the best thing I can tell you about Christmas crackers, though, is Christmas crackers, this exploding monkey, was that my wife, unimpressed with the contents of Christmas crackers for our son, what she regularly does, she buys rubbish Christmas crackers, then she buys nice little toys. Like one year she bought a load of great Doctor Who little figures, mini figures, and she stuffs them in to the
clever,
the crackers, so that the crackers have the most incredible little gifts in them, proper gifts, because the gifts were put in there by my wife, who is fantastic.
With intention there, as opposed to receiving nail clippers or one of those combs that gets rid of the fabric on your suit. You know the ones I mean?
Sort of.
You know, they're like sort of big things, and you open them and you go like that, and it gets rid of all the bits.
I would like one of those. I've never received one.
Oh well, I'm sure there'll be one somewhere in this house.
Tic-tac-toe or Bim Bam Bo.
Bim Bam Bo, great game. Well, I mean, living near a Waitrose now, the contents of the crackers have somewhat got better.
Oh yes, everything Waitrose does is very stylish. Do you think we'll get sponsorship after saying that?
I didn't understand a word of that because the connection was poor, and it now says your internet connection is unstable.
Yes, I just got that mentioned as well. But I did hear what you said because it did that speeding up of everything. So, well, we could talk about the internet, or I could mention the thing we do with the Benji and Nick Show is there are three kinds of podcasts. One where we've set ourselves a program to watch between podcasts, and we come back full of fresh insights about this cult television, or we talk about what we've been watching generally at the moment. Could be in the cinema as well. I watched a cinema film recently. Anyway, but that's for another podcast. Or the other one is we do a commentary, but so far we've only done commentaries of Doctor Who stories that feature the music of Carrie Blyton.
Surprise, surprise.
Yes, he famously employed a duck to do his music in Revenge of the Cybermen.
Gary Blyton has just got this little duck in the studio.
Squeeze the duck now!
Yes,
when I point the bat on, squeeze the duck.
That was a very good duck sound.
I do a very good duck.
Pretty
I can't
convincing.
do the speaking though. You know, the Donald Duck.
Yeah, but ducks don't speak, so it's a sort of pointless affectation.
Well,
isn't it, really?
I would say that's one. I hate animations that have talking animals in. That's why I liked Tom and Jerry, because Tom and Jerry never spoke. Well, except to just go, wah! Or is you ain't my baby.
Well, you had that woman. Was it Thomas? Yes. Which is fine. That's good enough.
Yes, the
feet.
Unconsciously racist portrayal of a black woman. They changed the voice later to an Irish woman because they thought that would be less racist.
Oh, that's How very
equally insulting, but just to another group of people. Well done.
We thought we'd insult a completely different group of people this week here on Tom and
Jerry.
We're
spreading the racism around on Tom and Jerry.
Equal racism for all.
Anyway, so I never expected to be talking about Tom, Jerry, and racism. That was one of the other animals in the house. There was Tom, there was Jerry, and there was racism.
Who was a hare.
Yeah, it was sort of like with matted hair, I think.
Yes, I think so, and a dusty old suit.
So the other thing we do, of course, we read out your emails sent to podcast@nicholasbriggs.com. And this week, Benji, what are we going to be discussing? What is our topic of choice this week?
So this week we are discussing Department S. S standing for sausage. The sausage department. A group of butchers who go around solving mysteries.
I don't think they ever say what the S stood for. I think we're meant to presume it's secret. Or
what was it say? The case? Yeah, it doesn't say on. It just looked on Wikipedia, but it
doesn't really.
There's lots to talk about with this one. From all different angles.
Or should we should do the emails first, shouldn't we?
I was going to suggest that maybe emails first would be a good idea, because that gets them out in the open, and then we can get on to the subject at hand.
We've got 3 lined up there. 3 quite short ones, actually, succinct and to the point. Benji, you do the first one if you like.
Okay then, so this one is called, the subject for this one is Your Excellent Podcast.
Oh, what a winner.
And this is sent by Simon Allen. Hello, Simon. It says here, as a recent convert to your podcast, I can't praise you highly enough for your constantly entertaining podcast.
Oh.
Thank you very much. Your depth of knowledge and instant recall of names and places are a joy to behold. So keep up the good work, Jamie and Richard. You swine! You horrible, horrible swine! You fiend! I'm referring there to the Jerry Anderson podcast. There,
he's having us on, isn't he?
He's having us on. Yeah. He's
you
swindler.
And that email, we like to say these things, I'm surprised you missed it out, was sent at 14:17 on the 11th of August.
It certainly was in the year 2019, which is where we is.
Thank goodness. This one was sent in the year 1951 by a pioneer who invented the internet earlier. No, this was sent on the 12th, and it was at 0208. So that's like 2 o'clock in the morning. From Aniran Hunt. Dear Nick and Benji, and we know Aniran, don't we? Yeah. On the topic of DVDs, we were talking about DVDs, funnily enough. While they certainly are becoming less popular due to streaming, people don't think about the fact that streaming is kind of paradoxically making things less available. It's a very good point. You have a subscription to a streaming service, and what is available? Sorry, I'll read this properly. You have a subscription to a streaming service, and what is available on that can easily disappear.
Bing.
So with streaming, you only have temporary access, unlike physical media. And Iron, you're so right. This is one of my big bugbears. Like the Apple TV thing. I must have mentioned this before.
Yeah, about that's an interesting.
Who curates the list? Someone has suggested what it is you want to be watching, and it suggests all sorts of things that I have no connection with. I think, well, who's making those suggestions? And they control what you watch. Whereas you buy a DVD, it's up to you. You can get it out anytime. All you have to do is wait the half an hour before a DVD machine actually loads up.
I mean, it's a case as well of the
no disc. Oh God, what?
That is your DVD player.
Yes, it was slightly off centre. I'll put it back in again.
Ha! Put that one back in.
That was you huffing on it.
Ha! Yeah.
Ha! Ha! I think what the sound that would convey that more is.
Well, yeah, but you can go.
That sounds like a slow motion karate chop.
Ha!
Or,
yeah, but
isn't it a lackluster one?
But would you much rather, if you were picking up a disc, say this beer mat that says Speisel Weissleben,
Stolen from Germany.
Stolen from Germany. Say this beer mat was a disc. Now, if I went like that, that's all right. But if I went that's much more fun.
Well, you're
having
not
a
wrong.
bit of fun in the time in which you're doing a mundane task. I mean, the one thing I would
weird.
say about the streaming thing is that they giveth and they taketh away, and how many times
they do.
Yes, well, quite. How many times you go to watch something, you find it's been taken off. You think, oh, where's that gone?
I know,
and it's really. I mean, I'll never forget. Never forget when I was because I'm late to the party with everything. I'll never forget when I finally got round to watching Lord of the Rings after many unsuccessful attempts to get through it. And now, of course, I think it's brilliant, but I did find it incredibly dull and boring.
But brilliant. What?
No, well, with age comes great wisdom, doesn't it? And the older you get, the more you put up with things. But I watched the end of the first film and I thought, this is great. I thought, I'm looking forward to watching the next one. And in the time in which I'd been watching it, they removed them all, and so I had to go and buy the Blu-rays just to finish it because I wanted to know.
What streaming service was it?
I think that would have been Netflix,
because
it's back on there now.
Back on, I noticed.
Classic, isn't it? They just
interestingly, because I was staying at an Airbnb place for my holiday this week, and the Netflix was someone else's, not mine. So it's really interesting to see what a different place Netflix is when it's someone else's preferences and a different algorithm, or the algorithm working in a different way. It's almost completely different, and it had all Lord of the Rings stuff across it, whereas mine doesn't have any of that on because I don't like any of that. It bores me to death. I have watched them all, but I did fall asleep in the first one. I'm in the cinema. I literally fell asleep. Even figuratively. I literally fell asleep.
Well, I think I just, when I watched it, I think I just walked out. I think it was that sort of equivalent. It just didn't do it for me. Whereas now, of course, as a medievalist, and I love all that history, I find it sort of quite interesting. But the point I'd like to make, when talking about these old shows, especially with things that we like, is there should be a streaming service for old television. They're just old films. There is a gap in the market there, and I think it's such a shame that nobody has stepped up and said, let's do this.
Yeah. Because I'd spend my life on it.
Well, I'd spend my life on it. There's the BFI. They've got their thing, but I'm not that interested in films. But they have got some old films.
I did subscribe to that streaming service of the BFI, but there wasn't quite enough.
There's not enough to get your teeth into, is there?
No.
Really?
There were some great things, and I was grateful for it for about a week. But then I'd sort of
seen what you needed to see.
But in a world there's some great footage. They have some sort of documentary. They have lots of raw footage of just people on docksides from, and as I think I've said in the podcast before, just cameras set up there, and people from the past looking at the camera, they just keep looking into the camera, and it's like it's kind of really spooky. It's like looking into a portal where ghosts are looking at you, and they're just staring right into your eyes, like they're wondering who you are, or I'm thinking, oh my goodness, you had no idea that someone from a century later would be looking back at you, as it were. Ooh. Something just downloaded.
Just Google being a pain. It's telling me I need to enter my password in. Don't know what that's all about.
I've forgotten mine.
It is, I love watching those old British Pathé or Pathé or whatever it's called.
That has the cockerel, doesn't it? Pathé News.
Yeah. It is brilliant. It is, but all those things.
The Queen and Prince Philip today were walking along,
having a wonderful time.
They fell over. Oh dear.
And here is a picture of an elephant on a scooter. And Prince Philip there nodding his head in approval. But the thing is, as well, in a world of like Netflix exclusive,
they will certainly be trumpeting their success.
Hey, in a world of Netflix exclusives and kind of with that way of things moving on now, with say an old school streaming service, you could absolutely do the same thing with documentaries. Look at how much mileage people have gotten out of Doctor Who, and the formats on that one. With redressing it for Blu-ray. that has opened up a wealth of new documentaries. Some people, as I know yourself, Nick, you say, I buy like the DVDs and for the documentaries and the content that's on them. I remember you've said that to me before. So it intrigues me that nobody, let's say for an example, Talking Pictures decided to do a streaming service. Now obviously I don't know if Talking Pictures are at the size financially to be able to do that, but say that they did. Can you imagine, for example, as I was talking to you the other day, Public Eye, huge on Talking Pictures, and when I was in Brighton I was going around trying to find a few of the locations. Now that within itself,
a nice video.
That would be a nice sort of documentary, wouldn't it? Somebody just going around saying, comparing the locations then and now. For example, in the first episode of that Brighton thing, he goes down to a strip of shops, and he goes down to try and find the name on a bit of paper, and I tried to look as to where those shops are now to find that they've all been demolished, and that whole area of town is completely different.
Did you find the bit of paper there?
I did find a bit of paper. It was on the floor, stepped on near a piece of chewing gum. Marvellous. But so that's my thoughts on streaming. So
I'll tell you my thoughts on streaming, slightly informed by some professional experience. The thing that stands in the way of streaming is that the copyright holders of various programs still regard streaming as extra revenue on top of download and physical media. So they charge very big percentages for it. That will be why I would venture Talking Pictures aren't doing a streaming service, because they can afford to pay for the rights to broadcast each film or TV series a couple of times. But when they ask about, Jamie Anderson saying that he's standing by. He's a bit keen, isn't he?
Yes.
We didn't mention that we speak to Jamie Anderson in this podcast. Jerry Anderson's son, Jamie Anderson, chats to us. I bet when they discuss streaming rights, the percentages are prohibitive.
Definitely,
I think. That's why. And what companies need to do is realise that if they just lowered the percentage that they want from a streaming service, that the copyright holder wants, they would in the long run get more money, because what's happening is that people aren't doing those streaming services, so then the content is not being paid for at all. So that I would venture is because there are also a lot of very good third-party digital sites who will provide streaming services for, say, a company like Talking Pictures TV, at a very reasonable rate. So but I think the problem is that the original material costs too much to stream.
I think you're absolutely bang on the money there, and I think you're right as well. For example, it's things like Talking Pictures. They show Dangerous Knowledge. Now, yes. I own Dangerous Knowledge on DVD, and I never would have bought that had I not seen it on Talking Pictures.
It's true.
So there are pros and cons for
absolutely
all of
same
it,
thing
really.
here. Same thing here. It's Talking Pictures TV has inspired quite a few purchases by my good self.
Well, I've got the problem with them is I just have so many. This is the thing. This is why I would like a streaming service, because it's just clogged up my whole all of my Sky memory in the box. There's things like I've got the whole series of Hannah on there, and I can honestly say I've not watched any of it yet.
No, and I can honestly say it's not worth watching.
Well, that saves
it is one of the most mediocre TV shows ever made, Hannah.
Really? Oh,
yeah,
dear.
with Robert Powell looking slightly too fat. Yeah.
Well, that's unfortunate.
He looks very slim apart, but he's got a tum. He likes his fine wine and food, I reckon.
He let himself go a bit. He let himself go.
Terrible thing to say. I mean, I'm sure the same thing could be said of me. Here's one last email. It's called Undercover Covers. It was sent on the 14th of August, which I believe was just a couple of days ago. And it was sent at 03:20. I'm thinking that he's emailing from... Yes, he is. Adam, his name is. And it's from Newcastle in Australia.
Wow.
Not upon time. Hello, Benji and Nick. Big fan of the show, which I listen to through the podcast app on my iPad or iPad. Except today when I decided to fire up the latest episode on my laptop while working. Heading to nicholasbriggs.com. I love the way he wrote dot in there so that I knew to read that out.
Good detail.
DOT. I was surprised to discover that there exists a magazine-style cover for each ep going back to February the 10th this year. I'd never seen any of these before, so I thought I would write you a letter, the reading of which might let other people who listen through a subscription service know they are missing out on these little extras. Cheers, Adam, Newcastle, Australia. Well, I'm really glad you wrote in to say that, Adam.
They are absolutely stunning, aren't they?
Yeah, they're
Cole
lovely.
DeGraeus,
and this gives us a chance to...
Colin.
Yes, Colin Smith. It gives us a chance to praise Colin, who just completely off his own bat started doing these, and we thought, yeah, they're nice. And,
he's an essential member of the team and a lovely human being, and he's just such a talented person. I mean, his
and a great wearer of hats.
A great wearer of hats, yes.
I loved his... what was it? I can't remember what it was now. It was a little pork pie hat, wasn't it, when we last saw him?
Yeah. In fact, I remember you complimenting the hat the last time we saw him. No, jolly lovely to see some praise for his work, because he is just always full of great positivity and great ideas.
Absolutely brilliant. And we always know that he's listening to the podcast to work out what to do the cover on next time. When I get my arse in gear, I actually email him and say, Colin, we spoke about this. It's interesting, the cover for this one has got Jason King on the front, and I would venture, nitpickingly, but interestingly, I think, so I like it, that the Jason King image on this cover is from the series Jason King, which was the sequel to Department S, because his hair's longer. And time had passed. Yeah, it's down on his shoulders by now. He'd become fully eccentric by now.
He'd gone fully stereotypical version of his own character.
But Adam, thank you for...
People become themselves.
Yeah, they do, yes. Who knows what I'll become. Thank you again, Adam. And huge thanks to Colin and his brilliant work where he does the Benji and Nick Show magazine covers. And it's also... It's a constant source of frustration to me that despite the fact that we upload the image and embed it in the audio file, that people on subscription services see a generic image and not our image, and we keep thinking it's something we're doing wrong. If anyone's got any advice to the uselessness that is Red Ray Gun Productions, please let us know.
Well, I think at this point, seeing as he's standing by, shall we phone Jamie Anderson?
What, get it over with before?
Well, I just think because we don't know how long we'll be talking about Department S, and time is money for these professional types. And so I wonder if he's standing by the phone, it might be a good idea. You know what he's like, he might choose to go to the toilet for half an hour.
Hello, you look like you were wearing a beret, but it is in fact your headphones.
In fact, it's just my headphones at a jaunty angle.
A jaunty angle?
Is that your best French?
No, that's... that is my French.
I guess I know you can do French because you played a Frenchman departing a party for me in Doctor Who Muse of Fire.
Did I? A Frenchman depart... I am going away from this party. It is nice.
That's almost what you said. You said, I think you said, don't expect much from them. It's full of wastes and strays. I'm going home.
I remember that character.
Well, of course he would, because he did the music.
Yeah.
What's he, mate?
So we decided, it was Benji's suggestion to come to you early before we've discussed our main topic, because you said you were standing by, and he said, he knows you're a I'm man.
That's very kind of him. More thoughtful than you, obviously.
Benji, I just want you to see... Yeah, absolutely. I just want you to see his face. Hold on, I'm having trouble turning my iPad around. My iPad.
It does look like a beret, doesn't it? That's amazing. Oh, ho, hee, ho, hee, ho.
Vous avez des oignons?
Non, mais j'avais les grenouilles.
What's one of those?
I think it's frogs. For the legs.
Yeah, oui.
Obviously.
Oui.
Or something else, escargot. Yeah. Anyway, this is very multicultural and multilingual, isn't it? This podcast.
And borderline xenophobic.
In a nice way, though.
Affectionately so.
Said the Prime Minister today.
Anyway, what are you discussing today?
Department S.
Which I've never seen. Good?
Well, I rather liked it. Benji, did you like it?
It's not bad at all.
Oh, prepare for the barbs of Benji.
You know he's too nice for real barbs.
No, of course, they'll be nice, fluffy barbs.
Yeah, they'll be pointless things, like the sofas don't look comfortable enough.
Funnily enough, Barbs is the name of our weather girl as well.
Oh, good old Barbs.
So, over to the weather with Barbs. Oh, no, hold on, I got that wrong. Should we ask Jamie a question?
Yeah, I've got a good question here. It's quite thought-provoking.
He always says that.
It says, what unethical experiment would have the biggest positive impact on society as a whole?
I've never thought of society as a whole. And the ground.
Like Swiss cheese.
Gosh, I mean... I suppose currently... just currently watching the... this is a very boring answer. Watching the dietary debate going on.
Is there one?
Yeah, there is, yeah. Well, as basically as to whether sugar is as toxic as tobacco or as fat allegedly is or was, it would be to divide the entire globe and put them on a no sugar and a no to low fat diet and see what the death rates were like after 30 or 40 years.
High
quite
risk.
Clever. That's pretty intelligent.
Group, certainly. Of course, he could discover that they're sort of it's complex interaction, and both would die young. There's a cheery thought. Is that the sort of answer you want?
Yeah, we love that.
Well, I suppose it'd be very interesting to see. It would have a knock-on effect to sewage plants in one end, maybe to the other. One might have a lot of work to do, and others it might be a lot emptier, smoother flow.
There could well be, yes. You may develop different requirements for medical care and for sewage and for toilet paper stocks all over the world, depending on which cohort you're in.
Yeah.
Or cohort, I think, as Colin Baker says. I don't know, I think I made that up, but
Colin always pronounces everything slightly strangely and then wants to argue about it. Luckily, he's not listening to this podcast, but if he is, give me a call, Colin.
If he is, he'll contact you immediately.
He'll contact me, yes.
Yeah.
I think he does say contact, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. He and I had a long discussion about it at some point. Anyway, it was straying off topic. We're being a bit too Doctor Who-y and a bit too medical.
Yeah.
Doesn't Benji have a lighter question than that?
Have you got a lighter question, Benji?
I've always got a lighter question, yeah. Let's click
something more pink and fluffy.
I love the way I clicked next question. It immediately came up with, how will humans as a species go extinct? Let's not go with that one.
Well, certainly long before the heat death of the universe. That's all I can say.
Yeah, good answer. Do you think that aliens exist?
Oh, yes.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't think they've come anywhere near us. But I'm sure somewhere out there, it's just the numbers of planets and star systems and stuff are just too vast for it not to be a decent chance of it.
Yeah, what do you think, Benji?
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I think it's probably very likely that there's...
What do you think, Nick?
I suppose it's difficult to know what I think because I just assume there are because of all my work. I rarely think about the question seriously.
Oh.
I rather think that there probably is some form of life, but I think that it is so different and would be so utterly bizarre to us that it would be pointless. You know what I mean? It would be like trying to have a conversation with a... I'm just looking for inspiration. With a
waste paper
stick?
bin.
Yeah.
A postcard.
Yes. You know what I mean? Or I don't know. No, it would be like the difference between custard and mathematics. It would be sort of... would be so, I think the infinitesimal, not infinitesimal, I mean the infinite possibilities in the universe and the differences in types of communications. And you think the massive possibility for misunderstandings between cultures just on Earth.
Absolutely, yeah.
With the completely different, assumptions about what life and reality and morality is. Just imagine about that, between planets where life will have evolved in a completely different way. Unless, of course, the universe is like Star Trek and so many planets seem to have evolved, rather like... planets have evolved rather like epochs of Earth history. I don't know, but... I feel I've spoken too much on the subject.
No, I'm fascinated. You're quite right, though. They're certainly not going to turn up and talk English, are they?
I think
that is highly unlikely, I would have thought.
Just because we could talk to them doesn't mean that we should, I think, is the kind of...
No, I agree. Can I give you an Anderson-related classic fact that I learnt the other day, just before I...
Yes, please.
The internet just went...
Oh, just before I go, can I say a thing which I discovered the other day, which may interest you, or you may already know?
What's that then?
Do you know the Jerry Anderson film Doppelganger, also known as Journey to the Far Side of the Sun?
I do.
From the late 60s, yeah?
Yes, 1969.
Yeah, exactly. Was that an idea that was bouncing around a lot in the 60s? Because I just discovered that Malcolm Hulke wrote a treatment for a
Doctor Who
Earth on the far side of the sun. It was very similar to the Doppelganger thing with a mirror Earth on the other side of the sun, but it was a bit more early 60s. You won't believe this, folks, but it's a matriarchal planet where women are in charge. So
imagine that.
Very 60s view rather than a literal mirror image, as in Doppelganger. But isn't it funny that in that era that was just being kind of bandied around and recycled so much?
Yeah, well, at least twice. I don't know whether I heard about it anywhere else, but interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Anyway, I'll stop saying things now and leave you to your podcast.
Okay, it's a shame. I had something vastly significant to say about alien life, and I just can't remember what it was. I know what it was. It's not that significant. When the first pulsar was discovered,
yes,
they discovered this sort of regular flashing light,
yes,
from space,
yes,
and they first of all theorized that it could not possibly be a natural phenomenon. So they had a discussion. The scientists who discovered it, they had a discussion about whether they should actually tell anyone, because they thought, if this is an intelligent species, just look at what's happened on Earth when and they're bound to be more intelligent than us because they are signaling us. Look what happened on Earth when advanced species, more technologically advanced species, met less technologically advanced races, and look at the mayhem. And they thought, there's only one thing that's going to happen to us.
A bad thing.
Yeah. And so they thought, let's maybe not tell anyone about what we've discovered. Interesting. It was just like 4 people in a room in Surrey or something, making this decision. And then they realised it was a natural phenomenon, so they just told everyone, said, oh, it's a star with a planet going around it that's obscuring it. Isn't that what it is, a pulsar?
I can't remember. Or is it a spinning thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Somebody who knows these things will tell us on Twitter, won't
yes,
they?
For goodness sake, someone write in and tell us what the hell we're supposed to be talking about.
Not this, you're supposed to be talking about Cult Telly.
So, yes, Department S. Okay, thanks, Jamie.
Sorry for keeping you and your listeners. I'll go away now.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure and an intellectual delight.
Likewise.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
There we go. Because I use my iPad now, it doesn't have that satisfying at the end when it goes away, does it?
Yeah, you have to sort your life out, Nick. What's that all about? Madness.
Department S, Benji.
Subject at hand, Department S. And that was Department S. Brilliant. So this is my first experience in years of seeing Department S, and I've never really sat down properly and decided to watch it. It's been on at times, but I've never sat down and been like, right, I'm going to binge through Department S. I enjoyed it. I very much enjoyed it. There are a few things I can criticise about the episode itself, but as a whole, I really enjoyed it. Nick, what about you? First impressions now.
Well, obviously I've seen it many times, and I've been watching some of the other episodes recently, just not for the podcast, just whatever. I've been going through my box set and looking at sort of titles that I don't recognise and thinking, I watched that one because I don't remember what that one's about. And some of them I go, oh, it's that one, and other ones I go, God, no, I've forgotten all about that one. Two main things I want to say about Department S. It has some of the best teaser sections of anything on television ever, right at the beginning when they set up the question, but balanced by the worst ever payoffs or explanations of said teasers. I mean, it's like, oh my God, there's an astronaut in the streets of London and he's just suffocated and died. What the heck? Then they just go, oh, was someone robbing a bank using an astronaut suit?
It's that, isn't it?
Yes. And likewise, this one, which is allegedly the first episode of Department S, is called 6 Days. And it's all about a jet airplane, airliner that turns up at Heathrow, presumably. Yes, it was Heathrow. And the guys on board, Chancellor Goth from Deadly Assassin, Bernard Horsfall, who's the captain, he says, and everyone turns up, all the top brass. Yeah, Taron as well in the Planet of the Daleks. All the top brass turn up at the airport. And he's saying, what's all the fuss? We're only half an hour early. He goes, half an hour early? You're 6 days late. Dun, dun, dun. Gives me, the hairs on the back of my neck go up. Just it's great. It's great thriller television. But then it's always about these three people. Stuart, Jason, and I can't remember her character's name.
Annabelle, isn't it?
Annabelle, that's right. Who are like the champions but without superpowers, who have to solve the crime. She is like a computer expert and is always collating information and is completely useless when it comes to action. There's no proto-feminism here. Stuart is the leg man who goes round. One of his favourite things is when a car's going to hit him, he jumps up and grabs hold of some piping and lifts himself over it or throws himself out. He's always nearly being run over by cars because that was the most exciting thing that could happen to you in the 1960s. And Jason King, who is allegedly the lead character, usually comes in quite a way into the episode and he's busy chatting up some girl or several. Which is hilarious since he was a big gay icon. But in those days, people weren't allowed to admit who they were, which was horrific. And then they work through the case in a really bog standard way, thinking of clues and with ridiculous leaps of faith. And it was, these writers that were very experienced writers of ITC series. They've written for them all, and they just recycle and reshape any old balmy plot about someone hiding in an attic or doing a bank job someone being brainwashed as well. The basis of this was that someone had been brainwashed or something.
You see, one of my problems with this is, and I very much enjoyed it, like I would say, like as a piece, it was like enjoyable television to watch. But one of the things that really frustrated me was the lack of really explaining what anything was or what was going on. So, for example, Stuart, for a good while watching this, I just thought he was some senior official at the airport or some investigative person. I had no idea. They never explain. They never give you they never tell you who anybody's name is. They never tell you what Department S is all about. They don't even tell you who Department S is. They work on this assumption that you just kind of already know. And I found that, obviously, after a while, I'm like, well, they're part Department S, obviously, those two work together. But there's this lack of there's this lack of kind of, like, for example, it almost feels like this first episode had been written later on, because they make a quip about the fact that Jason King, he's an author and he writes books, and she makes this gag at the end about his books, and it's only because I knew that the character writes
That's a
books.
really good point, mate.
That was just, it was such a pointless line to throw in there.
Her first reference to him writing is about halfway through the episode, and she says, what would Mark Cain have thought? And at that point they've not mentioned that A, he's a novelist, or B, that the hero of his novels is called Mark Cain. Now, this is the first episode on the DVD set, but was it the first episode broadcast?
Yes.
I mean, so as far as I'm aware, and I'm pretty darn certain, but I'm really pleased to be proved wrong, there is no first episode of Department S. There is no episode that introduces it. And to choose this one as the first, when clearly we're meant to know about Mark Cain and the novels, it's ridiculous. There must be another episode where he says, I write novels and that my hero is called Mark Cain. That should be the first episode. But yeah, you're absolutely right. This is not an introductory episode. They don't say, call in Department S, I'm Department S, this is Department S's boss, and all this kind of thing.
They just needed that one. You could have done it. You could have sorted that out in one scene. They call Department S. He's there writing one of his novels in his spare time. Picks up the phone. Bang. You know who he is. You know what's going on. They have a conversation. But the fact is, I was sitting there thinking, I had that moment where I thought, so that man is part of Department S. Those two characters that are off on their own somewhere else, he's linked to them. Right, now this makes more sense to me. Because
but they don't tell you that.
They don't tell you that. And I thought that was really a real problem for me.
Well, it's to do with the whole syndication thing. It's that 60s obsession with film television, that in order to make it easy to sell, you sell it to foreign territories and you say you don't have to show this in any order. You can show it any order you like. It doesn't matter, because it always became a problem. That it meant that different television companies would have to pay attention about what order they played stuff in. And I remember when I worked at the Sci-Fi Channel, they used to do things like I can't remember what series it was they were showing. It was some old pot boiler sci-fi thing. It was probably Flash Gordon or something like that. And they were showing it in the mornings, and they were stripping it across the entire week at, let's for argument's sake, say 10 o'clock. And then on Tuesday and Wednesday, they decided to put in a new program that they just got, or some up-to-date thing, and they just put it in the Flash Gordon slot. But then they just carried on with So they did episode 1, and then rather than carrying on with episode 2 on the Thursday, they just carried on with episode 4 on the Thursday. And I said, right, you've just missed out 2 of the episodes, because on the schedule they couldn't be bothered to recalculate. They just blotted it out on the schedule. And when I complained to them, I was, as I say, working there in the press and PR department. They said, have you seen the viewing figures? No one's watching anywhere. I said, yeah, but a few thousand people are watching. I mean, a few thousand people are going to be quite upset. And they just went, well, are they though? They just didn't care.
That's the way it is, isn't it, really? I suppose that's that.
And I'm sure things aren't like that now at the Sci-Fi Channel. I'm sure things are brilliant and everything's fantastic. But that was back in 1997. So I imagine that TV stations were more like that back in the 60s. It's just too much fun. Now, like the Champions, that had a very specific concept to introduce. These people have nearly died, now they've got special powers, here's the story.
But it's things you can cover it in a title sequence.
Which they don't.
You can have Department S, crime, blah, 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 da, 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 this person, that person, this. Bang,
well, there is a little bit of that.
But not to the same level as... I'm trying to think of an example of something
like
that
The Prisoner that explains everything. I mean,
like
The
Prisoner.
Yeah. I mean, The Prisoner's first episode is the title sequence, basically, isn't it?
But that's fine, because you can watch The Prisoner and you're going to be pretty darn certain it's going to be in the village and this is the situation that he's in. But you always know what's going on. It's always... Even though the vast majority of The Prisoner isn't explained, there's a lot of open-ended elements of it. You know what's going on. But with this, I don't know what Department S is. and
you never find out.
You never find out, and you just assume that they just deal with crimes that other people can't do.
That's it. Yeah. Interestingly, they get into conflict with MI6 or MI5 later, and there are at least 2 consecutive episodes which actually have the same head of the British Secret Service who they have difficulties with. So there's a tiny bit of continuity crops up. They also do weird things like cast the same actor in different roles in consecutive episodes.
That's things like that, you see, is just... But then I suppose it goes down to that classic bit of old school telly thing. There was not that same level of caring, I suppose.
They were churning it out.
They were churning it out, yeah. It's like old, Coronation Street. They just rehearse it, get it out, and it's done. And they probably thought to themselves, well, nobody's ever going to be watching that ever again. Nobody will probably think about that ever again. Oh, look, we've got another 13 episodes. Let's carry on. Doctor Who, another one. And then suddenly... Tilly changed and it all became very self-aware.
Yes. I think you're absolutely right in what you say there. I mean, also it has this sort of factory television element to it in the way it's shot, is that all the location shots have stand-ins for all the main lead characters. They're all shot from a distance with someone who is not even vaguely the same body shape or moves in the same way. Then all the location shots that are on the back lot, they feature the actual actor. So you'll see the actor on some location, and then when you cut to the close-up, they're on a mock-up of that location on the back lot with the actual actor. Or sometimes it's not until they get into an interior. I thought there was a lot of great establishing footage of vintage Heathrow Airport. I enjoyed that.
I mean, I enjoyed it. There was some wonderful stuff like that, the establishing shots, and also I loved all the airport interior stuff, and the plane interior was great. And I thought it was really good. Like, I loved all the stuff in the house. I loved that little bit, where she almost gets caught in the house and then comes out as the other woman.
Well, I think you have to explain it a bit more than that, Benji.
Well, they go back to this one of the main villains, we'll say. She goes to investigate his apartment, and it is worth knowing that this villain is in cahoots with the air hostess in this. But anyway, the air hostess comes back to the apartment, and in a moment of quick haste, Annabelle she goes into the back room, and you spend the time thinking, what on earth, how is she going to get out of this one? And of course, the hostess realises that somebody's been in there. But very cleverly, Annabelle has left a stocking on the couch there, and she comes out wearing virtually no clothes, and does this great act as though, that wonderful level of team splitting. She comes out as the other woman, acts completely chilled out about it. Says, "Oh yes, didn't he tell you about me, darling? If circumstances..."
Wearing an outrageous blonde wig that she just happens to have in her bag.
Yeah, well, that's ridiculous, but it's fun. I'll let that
all
slide. All
Department S agents have ridiculous wigs in their bags. Unfortunately, Jason King just wears his all the time.
Yeah. So true. So true. But
it's just an excuse to show a bit of flesh, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. It's one for the dads, isn't it? As they always say in the old Doctor Who thing. Oh, it's one for the dads.
And how can I carefully say this without sounding like a sexist old so and so? The dads would have been pleased with the way she looked in her sexy underwear. Let's put it that way.
She pulls it all off wonderfully.
Yes, exactly. You don't think, oh God, did we need to see that? I don't think that was appropriate to see her wear it. I don't think that suits her. It suited her very well. I mean, she is, yes.
It was a very self-aware choice. Let's put it that way. They were aware of what they were doing. They didn't say, we'll wait 6 episodes in. They said episode 1, we'll whack that one in there straight away. They knew what they were doing because
nudity. Well, no,
she's in nudity. Yeah,
she's in sexy underwear. She's skimpy panties and a skimpy bra.
Yeah, precisely. And but again,
she's a very slender lady.
But different time. This, we're talking 1969, so this was very different. If a character did this in episode 1 now, that wouldn't go down very well, and people would be very cross. But in this situation, it went down well. It adds to it, and it's an interesting element to the.
Well, the funny thing is about a show like this, this is a really insulting thing to say, but it's sort of like a kid's impersonation of what it's like. A kid has seen a spy show. Or film and gone, oh, it's sort of like this, isn't it? And these sort of things have to happen. And she has to take her clothes off, and he has to have a fight, and and a car has to chase someone, and then someone has to punch someone and run out of a room, and all this. And none of it's been particularly well thought through, but it's like it ticks all the boxes of the things that should be in a story like this, even though the story isn't particularly compelling or particularly inventive. It's, you could sort of half watch it and think, oh yeah, that's exciting. And the music is I think it's Edwin Astley who's done the music.
Great music, gorgeous stuff in there.
The whole time, isn't it? Yeah, someone only has to pick up a cup of tea and it goes dun 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 dun. Yeah, everything is completely oversold on the music, and in a way, he makes it for me. That theme is superb.
The music is superb. It's very Barry Gray as well, isn't it? In that sort of that time, all the high strings. Oh
yeah, yes, definitely, yes. But done with, I think, a bigger orchestra, and also just sounding. If it is Edwin Astley is down as the musical director, it doesn't say who the composer is. But I think that he did compose several stock tracks for this that were used over and over again. But the stock tracks have so much musical movement in them that you can make them fit to almost anything. I've seen the same long track fitted to about 5 episodes recently, and I just thought, my God, it's like it's composed just for this bit, but I know this piece of music. He's very clever, Edwin Astley, really underrated, if indeed it was him, whoever it was, very underrated composer. They're brilliant, those guys who did the music back in those days. Amazing.
Well, the thing is, I think the music is such a defining factor in all these old shows as well. It's there are so many. I mean, especially when we look at the ITC stuff. I mean, you've got the Prisoners' music is quite distinct. You've got all of the Jerry Anderson stuff. That's Space 1999. Very specific way of doing that. The Saint, Randall and Hopkirk. They've all got very, very good scores that totally kind of define.
The Saint and Randall and Hopkirk are Edwin Astley as well, I think.
I believe so. Yes, I'll double check for you. But
yeah.
But I mean, he
was the master of this stuff. He was really
Edwin Astley. He knew what he was doing. You've got a great combination there. When I look at Department S, I think it is. I think ITC are fantastic and really set the bar for what television in the 1960s and 70s could be. However, I do feel like out of all these great shows, Department S lacks somewhat. It doesn't quite.
Well, do you know it was the last one they made on 35mm?
Well, that's an interesting. That's quite an interesting thing, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, the next series was Jason King, and that's shot on 16mm stock, and it just looks much grainier and less impressive.
But the thing, Jason King. Now there's an interesting thing. It's they've looked at Department S and said, well, this is great, but most people are watching for Jason King.
Yeah,
let's just do
the character,
that.
Wasn't he? The one that the ladies loved.
The one that ladies love. If you've only got to look at the fact that they chose to stop Department S to pursue a solo spin-off for him, kind of proves to me that their heart wasn't in Department S. Because if they really believed in the show, they would have said, "Oh, well, actually, it's like, for example, imagine if Doctor Who 2005 came back and they said, "Oh, this is really great, but actually, we're just going to carry on with Rose Tyler because people just preferred Billie Piper to Chris Eccleston." It's like that level of like, okay, well, let's just carry on doing something that's people prefer.
Also, it's quite a departure if you think about it. Only, correct me if I'm wrong, The Saint and Danger Man were the only big continuing ITC series. All the others were just all one series wonders.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Absolutely.
And this, so like all the others, this went the same way, cancelled after one series, but they thought, I think there's something else in this has got legs, so. And Jason King is just, it's bizarre because he's not a member of Department S or anything. He just writes books and gets involved in crimes.
when puts himself, isn't it that wonderful thing as well that he thinks to himself, what's the character of his novels called?
Mark Cain.
Mark Cain. He thinks, what would Mark do in this situation?
Yeah,
and that is a wonderful element. You know, that for me is much better than if you were to say, you know, this is a top secret organisation that solves crimes that other people can't do quite as well. Do you think, okay, well that's interesting, but I've seen a lot of that before. But if you say he's a writer, but the way that he solves real crimes is by getting into the mind of his fictional character he's created. Now I think that's quite complex, but that's really interesting. I can get into that. It's kind of seems like this is like you very much said. It's kind of a rehashing of that spy formula, isn't it? It's kind of just we're doing a spy show. Not to say that it's bad, because I don't think it's bad. I think it's good.
No, I mean it's great. It's got great cult nostalgia value, but I mean the plots do not stand any degree of scrutiny, and some of the scripts are the dullest things on earth. There are some great ones as well, so it's certainly worth getting the box set from Network, I'd say. Definitely worth it.
It's good non-committal telly. It's like if you go to it's like if you go to the supermarket and you know you go to buy some beans, for example. Now,
some beans.
If you go to Tesco, which is a huge supermarket chain in this country, go to Walmart or wherever you want to go, there's not a lot of variety between different cans of beans, are there? You buy Heinz beans, there's a slight quality upgrade in the sauce, and that's a bit like this. You know, ITC offers a lot of baked beans, but only a few of those baked beans are truly masterpieces. And unfortunately, this is just your bog standard baked beans. It's all the good bits of. You know what you're getting with it. You know what you're getting. You won't be disappointed.
Well, fans of bean analogies will be absolutely rocking in the streets right now.
But you know what I mean. It's they know what they're good at and they deliver, and it's good. You're not going to have beans on toast and think this is bad. You're not going to watch Department S and say this is not as good as something else. Well, you are going to say that, but you're not going to say
you are going to say it's not as good as the Champions. At least the Champions. I mean, the Champions had the same collection of rubbish scripts, but it's still sort of it had that extra zing.
It's the concept.
Of the concept, yeah. Apparently, this was shot at the same time as Randall and Hopkirk.
Well, you can see where their interests were lying at that particular time. But again, Randall and Hopkirk, what has it got? It's got the concept.
Yeah.
It's got that. You know, there are both those two examples, the Champions and Randall and Hopkirk. They've both got extra bits to them. They solve mysteries and deal with things, but there's that extra thing. But Department S is just like, it's just a department of people, really, aren't they?
Yeah. Just
interesting.
Now, I must just mention the starting sequence for my dear friend's John Ainsworth's sake, because we always used to laugh our heads off. Because the starting sequence is this sort of weird, brashly coloured, pixelated image of all the leads. I mean, the first thing is the way they swankily pass the Department S dossier to each other, and they can imagine them filming that. They're not extracts from episodes, it's them specially set up, and they're doing this kind of this looks interesting, oh thank you, and and the lady does all that kind of like it's all sort of flirty, and they pass the dossier over the camera and it blanks out, and it's weird. And then they cut to Sir Curtis, their rather sort of a noble boss, and he's sitting in his he's always in the back of a limousine, isn't he? Stuart, I've got a mission for you. And he takes the dossier, looks at it, and then the degree of care he takes in placing it on exactly the right point of the car seat beside him is just they should have done another take, and John and I, when we've watched it, always gone, just put left a bit. You can almost hear the people telling him where to put it, and it's just too fiddly. Are you watching it now?
I'm watching it. It's so true. He lingers too long to stop it from slipping down as well, yes. Doesn't he?
It's probably the fifth take, and they're sick. They say, look, we've got to get it in this one, we're running out of stock.
But you see,
Come on, Sir Curtis.
I'll tell you one thing, though. It shows how much care I was taking when I was watching it, because I had no idea that he was permanently involved in the organisation. I just thought he was some bloke on the flight that worked for an embassy.
Oh, yeah.
I had no idea that he was involved.
It's not, we've banged this drum, haven't we? It's not... There's no first episode. Where is the first episode of Department heads, I'm writing to my MP.
I'm writing to Dr. Spooner, and I'm going
writing
to ask
on my
him.
face with a crayon.
Writing to the lead singer of Echo and the Bunnymen.
Why?
Who am I? I mean, I don't know who I am. But
why did you say the lead singer of Echo and the Bunnymen?
Oh, have you not? It's from the Young Ones.
Oh, is that what he says?
Rick says, "God, I'm going to write to my MP," and then Vivian says, "You haven't got an MP. You're an anarchist." He said, "Right. Well, in that case, I'm going to write to the lead singer of Echo and the Bunnymen."
I loved Echo and the Bunnymen.
But yeah, I mean, Department S, I'll give it a 3 exclamation marks out
Same
of
here.
5.
Same
it's
here.
Bog standard, slap bang in the middle. That's where I'm putting it.
I love it.
think.
The theme tune, I have to confess, I listened to the theme tune in the car about 6 times in a row. Every time I play, when I get to that bit, I just get back to the beginning. I just love it. I love the string, the strings, that anticipation, and the Hammond organ in there going.
It is great. It is,
and you can
great.
follow that Hammond organ all the way through, and the very complex alteration in the notes as it goes in. It's just such a fantastic bit of composition,
and it's so definitive of the era in which it was
very evocative,
in which it was written. It's it's very quintessential.
But we can't give it more than 3 because actually it's total rubbish.
Yeah, it's just.
But I loved watching it, and I want to go and watch it again now. Maybe not that episode.
It's one of those ones. Just sit in the evening, chill out, watch it, and it's not
honestly
not going to change
my
your
advice
life.
is, if you can't be bothered to watch it all, just watch all the teasers because they're all fantastic. The teasers at the beginning.
Good enough, yeah, good enough.
But I'm only a poor little sparrow. No, that wasn't one of them.
I'm a goldfish. How have I got legs? It turns out
the astronaut one's great, and it comes up. It says I think it says the man from Planet X or something.
See,
which
like
he's not, or the man from X.
Thought-provoking, but ultimately lacks any payoff.
Well, we've done Jamie Anderson to death, so time to decide what we're going to do next week. I'm going to suggest it's what we've been watching recently.
Absolutely, I've got plenty to say.
What have we been watching recently?
Well, I've spent a lot of time watching, believe it or not, The Demon Headmaster.
Oh, well, we'll definitely have to talk about that.
That's a cracker, and I really want to talk about that one.
I'm going to talk a bit about Another Life, which is a Netflix series.
Okay, yeah.
I saw Yesterday at the cinema.
I was going to see it, but never did in the end because I
love it.
Yeah, it looks good.
Divisive.
I listened to his score, and I have to say, I was underwhelmed. But I like the idea. Anyway, we'll talk about that next week.
Well, I'll see if you can watch it. There's lots of other things I've watched, but those are the headlines for Colin Smith to put on the cover.
I'll tell you what, one thing I did watch, actually, an episode of Duty Free.
Oh,
yes,
I'd have to resign from the podcast if you made me watch that.
Right, well, I suppose it's on that little shell of a bomb. It's goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me. Pressing stop now. Ka-chunk.